We have been going through the book of Matthew, looking at Jesus and his interactions with his disciples. What was he teaching to them? What correction was he bringing to them? And then how do those lessons translate to us today as his current disciples? We find ourselves in Matthew chapter 18, starting with verse 7. These are the words of Christ, reading from the English Standard Version. It reads, "Woe to the world for temptation to sin. For it is necessary that temptations come, but woe to the one whom the temptation comes. And if your hand or your foot causes you to sin, cut it off and throw it away. It is better for you to enter life crippled or lame than with 2 hands or 2 feet and to be thrown in the eternal fire. And if your eye causes you to sin, tear it out and throw it away. For it is better for you to enter life with 1 eye than with 2 eyes and be thrown into the fire of hell." And so this is a really interesting text, a very important text. Jesus here, he starts off and he's basically saying, woe, or how intense it is that there's, and unfortunate in a way, that there's temptation in the world. But at the same thought, he says, but it's necessary. And here's the reality is we can go through temptation and we can often wonder, why do I have to go through this? Why do I have to struggle to feed the spirit or feed the flesh? Why do I have to have this, as Romans talks about? But there's an importance to it. It's the same with anything. You go to the gym and you lift heavier weights so that they won't seem as heavy to you. If you're on a diet and there's a pie on the counter, you're saying to yourself, man, I want to eat that pie, but you resist and you hold back and you decide to grow in your self-control. In the spiritual sense, this is the exact same. You are growing in self-control, and temptations are there to help you grow in that control, to be able to say, you know what, I once wanted you, I once felt like I needed you, but now I don't need that anymore. I'm not feeding the flesh. I'm not feeding the desires of my heart, but rather I'm setting my heart on the ways of God. And so then you grow in self-control. And what happens is, just like with the weights, the temptation becomes less and less and less until your desires start to line up more and more with God and his ways and what he wants for you. Now, some people have this idea in their mind that the temptation to sin, of certain sins or something, is not that big of a deal. Like, it's not that important. It's not that bad if I do this, or if I continue in this habit, or if I think this way theologically, or something like that. And the reality is that it is. Christ speaks about this right here, and he uses very important language. He says that if your hand or your foot causes you to sin, to cut it off and throw it away, that it would be better for you to enter into life, and he is life, to enter into God without that limb, than to keep the thing that brings you into sin and enter into hell. He says the same thing with your eye. It'd be better for you to pluck out your eye than allow it to continue to lead you into sin, so that, then you can go to hell, but you'll have your vision, you'll have your eye, kind of thing. And before you get out the saws and the knives and start cutting away at your limbs, understand though, the reality is this is imagery, and most of the temptation doesn't have to do with your hand or your feet or your eyes, but rather with your mind and your heart. And what we need to do is grow in self-control and have the mindset of, this is sinful, this is a big deal, this temptation or this thing that pushes me towards sin, this relationship with this person who encourages me to sin, this ideology that almost celebrates sin, or definitely in some cases celebrates sin, I need to remove that from my life. And what some people do is they hold on to that because it's hard to give these things up sometimes. And they think, well, it's not that big of a deal. Well, Christ here is saying you can hold on to that if you want, but you'll be carrying it with you into hell, into the eternal fire. He's not talking in some figurative place. He's talking about a literal place here. And so we need to be people who say, I am going to put my temptation away. Grow in your self-control, but also realize you're not alone in this. Just like in the Lord's Prayer, Lord, lead me not into temptation. Deliver me from evil. Help me. Give me the strength. Give me the guidance, and give me the conviction to know. And then from that conviction, to be able to say, all right, I'm not going to go this way. I'm going to turn from it and instead embrace the ways of God. And so what you need to do is analyze your life. Analyze the things that you are allowing to influence in you. That could be books, that could be certain media outlets, that could be preachers that you listen to who have poor theology, that could be relationships with people that you know that don't speak life into you, but rather speak darkness, who want you to continue in sin, who have no issues with sin, who celebrate sin. These are things that there's no place for in the Christian's life. And as you grow stronger and stronger, those temptations will fade away. And then you'll be able to revisit those ideas from like a mental standpoint of growing in your understanding and seeing the error in their ways and that sort of thing. But we should never just think, oh, I'm tempted about this sin. It's not that big of a deal. It is a big deal. It is sin. It is disobedience to God and His will. And as we know from, well, the entire Bible, sin leads to death. And sin is not what the Christian should be pursuing or entertaining or being tempted to. Instead, we need to push that away and pursue righteousness. Be tempted to do good. Be tempted to grow closer to God. Be tempted and give in to the temptation to pursue God in every area of your life. That's what we should be doing. I hope that's encouraging to you today. And I hope that as you look into your life, you'll be able to have a sobering perspective to say, Lord, what is of me and what is of you? And then, as we often do in springtime, you'll be able to do some spring cleaning, not in the literal sense, but in a spiritual sense. It's very important. I hope you have a wonderful week. I hope you get to enjoy this weather we have and honor God in all that you do.